Hi everyone, Trevor here with La Luna Barbecue. We are going to be talking about managing fire and managing a pit here with an offset smoker. Today I'm cooking on a Jambo Pits backyard model. Some of this will also talk just a little bit about the Jambo itself. Anyway, really killer smokers. They do a few things a little bit differently than some of the other types of offsets, just a really high level breeze over those. The firebox is a little bit higher set, as you'll notice on these pits, just because where they're wanting the fire chamber to enter into the cooking chamber, it actually makes for a really even heat across the chamber. I do have a mid-grate level collector and smokestack on this particular pit. So a few things for those of you that are watching this with various types of pits. The better manufactured or the better engineered the pit, the easier it's going to be to manage the fire. This pit is really well engineered. It's really easy to keep the fire going where I need it to go. But I've also cooked on Oklahoma Joe's smokers, and the first smoker I ever had of any kind was actually a char griller offset smoker, and that thing was, I mean, talk about escapement of heat and smoke everywhere possible. So I do know, the processes for a lot of those, so we'll talk a little bit about kind of some of those differences. But essentially what you want to think of when you're working with the smoker, and this is actually similar. I'm actually a plumber by trade. This is similar to how like your furnace and your water heater exhaust is. The actual exhaust pipe does a lot of the work. That's why you'll see tons of videos of people talking about different heights. The magic number, as far as any of the engineering charts that you'll find, Aaron Franklin talks about this as well, is 2/3 the length of your cooking chamber is how tall you want your smokestack from where it actually, the center of where it's leaving the chamber to the top of the actual smokestack. So that's kind of the magic number. You can go higher than that and you'll find that it'll draw a lot. If you go lower than that, it's not the end of the world, but you are going to suffer more from uneven cooking zones, which sometimes that can be a good thing. A lot of people talk about the uneven cooking zones in offsets, especially traditional offsets rather than reverse flow, as a bad thing. But as long as you know those spots, you can actually use that tool to your advantage, because you can cook things at different temperatures at the same time. This particular pit, the Jambo, was designed to be even across the chamber, and so they do just have the single tell true right in the center here. I've run this numerous times with ThermalWorks sensors throughout the chamber, and it is almost dead even. I do get one hot spot really close to the collector for the exhaust, but even right up against the cooking chamber, it's pretty much dead on. So that again is the way that I prefer to do that. But in the past, on previous pits with the Oklahoma Joe's, it was nice to be able to do chicken on one side and the pork butt on the other side. So again, use that to your advantage. Don't feel like that's the worst thing in the world if that's what your pit decides to do. So okay, so now I'm going to go through my process for getting an offset smoker rolling and getting everything started. I do like to start with a full basket of actual charcoal briquettes. These are B&B charcoal briquettes. If you kind of dump the whole basket in there, you don't have to do it over the concrete, and then just have yourself some high heat glove. Grab from the back and wiggle that out. And then I'll go in there with a decent sized log. This one might actually be a little bit too long, but this is some oak. I've got oak and hickory I'm cooking with today. Kind of even out the charcoals. And then that one will lay diagonally in this particular pit, so I'll start with that. Basically, I'll leave this on here, until it starts to flame. This one is a bit smoky. It may not be completely dry, but we'll see what happens here. A lot of times you will get that initial smoke off, even if the wood is kiln dried. You just kind of have to let that play out. But this is the first log we're throwing onto this charcoal. So essentially what we're gonna do from here is we're gonna burn at least a couple of logs here. So for this portion, I just leave the door open until we start to smoke off a little bit. For right now, I do have the damper on the exhaust completely open, and then yeah, so we are now preheating. We got that log on the fire, starting to burn pretty well now. Okay, so we're right at a time where we're ready to add a new log onto this fire. What I do is I essentially use this basket for my burn, and then I do keep usually about 2 logs at a time over here that are kind of like pre-drying out and heating up. We're gonna basically, usually I'll kind of use that to stir. Sometimes I'll do like a drop periodically. You don't want to waste too many of those coals, but we throw that on there, and then we're gonna essentially wait for that to burn up. I'll throw another log on here in a second. You're gonna produce a fair amount of smoke when you first put this on. It's just sort of the combustion process of having to bring that up to where it'll be a flame rather than just hot coals. So I'll usually leave my door completely open while that smokes off. This piece of wood was kiln dried. This is smoking a little bit more than what I normally like to see out of those, but I had been filming that other section of the video, and my coals came down a little bit more than what I would normally like them to. Okay, I'm gonna keep that part in. It kind of makes the whole process look bad, but it is part of the process, and it's not gonna be perfect every single time. What I did is I hit this, I've got what's called a barbecue dragon fan that I keep around for, kind of helps starting charcoal, but it's also nice to have for an offset smoker. I hit it for 2 seconds and my log started to achieve actual combustion. The problem is if you let your coal bed die down a little bit too much, which I did in this case, just kind of concentrating or paying too much attention to filming that video, the wood is just going to smolder on there rather than catch fire immediately, and you really want that to catch fire right away, or you're going to get that dirty smoke coming out of there. So again, that's kind of a lesson learned in process here. You really got to pay attention to your fire. And obviously I was doing some other stuff because of the efficiency of this pit. My temperature was still sitting at 250, even though my coal bed was really pretty low. So anyway, once you get really good combustion on this, my little trick. All right, sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties. My camera is overheating here because of the over 100-degree temperatures outside, and of course the fire here. It's essentially time to throw on another log here, so I'm just going to do that with y'all present here. So if you see again the difference between last time and this time, that started up the second I threw it on. So you are still going to get some smoke off just because it's brand new, especially if you do use wood that still has the bark on it or some of the bark on it, which I do use. I don't really notice a difference between bark and barkless other than this smoke off, and I think maybe that's kind of the kicker, why people feel like it's worth paying extra for that type of wood. I don't, but the little trick I was kind of mid discussion on last time is start until it's really good and burning with my full door open, and then I just kind of slowly start to close down my door to sort of damper that off. A lot of times if you just go straight and close this off, it's going to start smoking pretty bad. And so you really, again, a lot of the focus here is just on trying to keep that fire clean and that smoke clean. So spending a little extra time, and then I just sort of slowly close my door down. So I'll leave it here for maybe as much as a minute at this level, and then as soon as it kind of slows down, then I go a little bit more. And so just in my experience, if you shut it right after that's getting burning really well, it just really does start to smoke out. So just kind of a little tip there. And then you can go ahead and close it all the way down or to whatever point. Again, some smokers, you're just using the door itself as your damper for the intake, and a lot of that stuff, I hate to say there's not a science to it, but every pit is a little bit different, and you just kind of have to learn how yours likes to do it. Some people just swear by, oh, the perfect science is just use the door no matter what you have, and that's it, and let the exhaust be wide open. In this case, the damper is there anyway, and it's not going to affect how that pulls out if it is all the way open, even partially open. A lot of people think it disrupts the flow through there, but it literally, what actually draws the heat out of an exhaust is the heat of the exhaust of the metal itself. And so the process really doesn't change. It's just like shrinking the size of the entire pipe, even though it's just one section of restriction. Anyway, I'm pretty much to the point now where I'm going to go ahead and close that now that we've been chatting for a little bit. And again, this closed, if you've got an offset smoker like a Oklahoma Joe's or a Char Griller, again, just kind of learn what you're doing with your knobs and your dials. I do still recommend having the door fully open when you put your log, and do that kind of partial closed, even if you have a pretty good sized damper on there. But right now we're holding steady at just over 250 degrees on this, and it stayed right in there the whole time. And again, that's the differences between your high efficiency and thick metal smokers, is you have some buffer when you're opening the chamber and you're doing your wood and stuff. The metal thickness is going to help retain that heat during that process, whereas with your Char Grillers and your Oklahoma Joes, even though the Oklahoma Joes are pretty thick metal, you have a lot of heat loss, and again, it's not as thick. This smoker and a lot of other smokers have a fully insulated burn chamber as well, which helps, but you will lose some heat during those log add times for sure on those smokers. But again, it's just, the process is worth it to maintain that good quality and clean smoke. This is essentially what your exhaust should look like the entire cook. You can hardly tell there's anything coming out of it. It's a little easier to tell probably in person than what I can see on the screen. It's almost just clear heat that's coming out of there. With the offset smokers, especially for those of you that are coming from other types of cookers, I got all kinds of other cookers out here. Don't focus so much on the dampers. The dampers and stuff are part of the process, but the whole thing is your fire, and making sure that it's burning clean. I know I keep saying that through this video, but that's really it. So you're almost just going to learn more how many logs at a time and how often you need to add those logs to maintain the temperature that your pit wants to maintain. I don't almost ever, unless I'm just really trying to crank up my temperature for a wrap or kind of a final haul, I don't hardly ever touch my damper up here, and I literally never touch the damper here. I do, again, manage the door a little bit, which is kind of like that, but again, it's almost more about burning the type of fire and the size of fire that you want for the heat that you want. Again, we are pretty much sticking at 250 this entire cook with very little effort. That dial has this entire time hardly budged from that. Alright, so that's my video on fire management for an offset smoker. Again, just remember, clean fire, everything, focus more on the actual fire, how it flows through the chamber and all that, rather than worrying as much about dampering and stuff. The problem with dampers on the offset smoker is you're causing that wood more to smolder or to die down. Even in a charcoal smoker, if you damper too much, you start to get real smoky and some of that creosote flavor and everything in it. So with the offset smokers, that's why some of the higher end pits, like the Aaron Franklin pit, is one that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head. Doesn't even have any dampers at all. It's designed to cook essentially at a certain temperature, depending again on how many logs, how much you have in the chamber, and how you're cooking. So with this particular cooker, and really with a lot of cookers, even on my Oklahoma Joes, I'd never had more than a couple of logs, a couple of splits in the cooker at a time. And this one, it's one split about every 30 minutes. And with the Oklahoma Joes that I had, I was doing, I think, 2 to maybe 3 every 30 minutes. The one that I was really having to pump fuel into, even with some of the modifications, was the char griller that I had been working with in the beginning, and that really kind of fatigues you. It does pay off in the end to spend that extra money on a nicer pit, but obviously we understand if that's what you're working on. There's lots of great mods you can find on Google, lots of great mods on YouTube here, but things like, you know, gaskets or using some actual fire caulking to seal between the chamber, the 2 chambers. So lots of different things, extending the exhaust pipe a little bit taller. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this and got some information out of it. I'd appreciate any likes and follows. I am trying to create a bunch of new content here now as I'm kind of building my little outdoor area here. So please, again, like and subscribe if you could, and I'll be making some more content. I do have a video of a Mississippi pot roast that I'm working on at the same time as this video. That'll be up shortly. I know I've got a couple of tri-tip and a meatball, a meatloaf video that I have yet to upload that have been created. So please check out my other videos and like and subscribe. Thank you.